What is up, everybody? This is Ryan here for the Scale Up Show. I have an awesome guest on today. I have Sunny Han, who is the CEO and founder of Fulcrum, was actually a former #1 player in the world for World of Warcraft, or I should say on the #1 team. Did some really amazing things, talks about really in depth and gets vulnerable about losing co-founders, his journey along the way, and now that things are starting to take off and come through the other side, what it takes to make that happen. You're not going to want to miss this episode. You're going to really appreciate it. Sunny goes to a lot of areas that people won't talk about. All right, Sunny. So before we get too deep into your story and about what you're doing, let's do a real quick revenue rundown. So where are you at in terms of your ARR, in terms of your revenue journey?
We just crossed the 4 million ARR threshold at the end of last quarter, and we're adding 600 to 800,000 a quarter now, pushing for $1 million a quarter.
Nice. So that's good. So that puts you on track for that 6 to 7 million by the end of the year. So in terms of that, what's your primary go-to-market strategy for revenue growth?
Well, everybody gets funneled into an SDR in some way or shape or form. So there's a lot of referrals that come in, quite a bit of inbound and SEM, but there's also a team of SDRs that are targeting very specific folks that are out there with really personalized emails that have a drift video included in them that take a long time to produce. That we research them, we look at their website, we really take a look at their profiles as much as possible, and it's a much lower volume approach than what other founders that I've talked to take, but the yield, the amount of converted leads is certainly supports the strategy.
So what's the volume and conversion rate you're talking about? Because that's super interesting, and there's a lot of talk on going more quality over quantity, I guess you could say.
Yeah, the strategy is really informed by like a lot of advice from people. So I don't want to say that I came up with anything. I'm more of a conduit for learning from other people. But there's a short conversation that I had with the CEO of Procore, who is doing a lot of what we're doing, but for construction, and they're a public company that's worth billions of dollars. So not even close. But one of the analogies he gave me is that no matter what stage that you're at, you have a limited number of resources, whether you're a public company or a tiny startup. And the wider the breadth that you're putting those resources across, the more you're peanut buttering it across a bunch of different things. And I don't know why, I don't even like peanut butter, but I don't know why that particular analogy really stuck out to me. But ever since then, I've been trying to put my brain to the task of hunting for different ways to concentrate our resources. And a really highly personalized and customized outbound is essentially the best way to do it. I think the second thing is there's a book called Crossing the Chasm. It's a really old book. It was written, I think, in the 80s or something. But it really talks about how there's a difference between early adopters and the early majority. And really, if you try to market to everybody all at the same time, you're going to have a lot of trouble because people buy differently, even if they're the exact same types of customers. And so those two things combined, the realization is that when you're shrinking the target that you're going after, you're not shrinking your opportunity. You can always build more product, expand out, whatever it may be. You're just making it easier for someone who isn't as much of an expert on manufacturing as I am to be able to know what to say and what to ask and how to target those folks. So that's really what's worked. And I think we're not there yet, but we're hunting for pockets of companies that are in the hundreds, 300, 400 companies to be able to go after, not the hundreds of thousands of manufacturers that are out there in the US. We're trying to boil that down to really small, super similar pockets of 300 to 400. And we're trying to get one SDR to outbound all of them in one quarter. So not a huge amount of output in terms of number of companies contacted.
Okay. And with the video conversion, so like on average versus like a normal conversion, like what, like I should say a non-video conversion, like what are you seeing? And we don't need to get super deep on this now. I'm just curious, like what kind of percentage conversion do you see on that?
I mean, the numbers are less impressive on the converted qualified lead side as it is on the actual replies. The replies are roughly 5x higher, right? Going from a 2% response rate to a 10% response rate. On the converted leads, they're about 2x higher. So there's clearly more noise, but there's also more signal. So it's very worth it.
Yeah, 2x is, I mean, Twix is really good in terms of converted. So, okay, so that's your go to market. That's pretty cool. At the same time, like, how large is your team?
There's three SDRs right now. One that was just hired in the last few months, and there are five AEs. There's one that was hired in just the last couple months as well. So the ramped team is four AEs and two SDRs.
Okay. Well, how about as a company as a whole? Like, how big is
Oh,
your
the,
team?
the team is 68 people in size right now, and it's
Okay,
about
good.
60% engineering, product, and design. So we plow pretty heavily into the product itself.
Okay, that's awesome. So then from there, I guess, like, what exactly does your solution do, and how does it serve people?
The best way to think about it for folks that don't work in manufacturing is that it's imagine if your life was really, really complicated and you needed something to aggregate all the information from the different things that you do. The companies that we work with aren't huge. They're not Boeing and they're not GM, but they're fairly large companies that have dozens, if not hundreds and thousands of employees. And those types of companies have their business split up into different roles. There's a role that's there for selling, for taking in demand and returning quotes out. There's a group that is in charge of taking a look at all the sales orders they have and what to purchase and when to purchase it. There's a group that decides when to build things. There's a group that decides how to do it and when they do it, to collect the data to report back to everywhere else, to measure the quality control measurements, and then finally to ship it out and inventory it and all those good things and invoice it. Our product does all of that, and really the biggest quantum leap for us isn't anything that's like super clever. It's just realizing that having real-time data, having people put things into a computer system that's on the cloud, instead of writing it on a piece of paper and entering it in a few weeks later, all of the things, all of those decision-making algorithms just run a lot better. It's like waiting for 2 weeks to get your Apple Watch data on what your heart rate was. Well, that's not nearly as useful as if you can see it live, right? That's the type of movement that we're able to offer our customers.
I love that analogy. I'm gonna steal that, man. It's like waiting for 2 weeks to have your Apple Watch, like, heart rate data while you're in the middle of working out, so you don't have a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
I obviously added those last pieces on there, but I love that. Okay, so and then are you? I mentioned that you're Series A, so you're funded in at that Series A level. How much was your funding?
Our Series A was 18.8 million, and we closed it quite a bit ago on June of last year. So it's been a year and a quarter now since then, a year and a few months. And we raised a seed round in August of 2020. So other than that, before that, we were bootstrapped.
Okay, excellent, man. So why, since you were bootstrapped, why did you decide to take on funding?
Oh man, so many reasons. One, this sounds so obvious, but it's really not possible to focus on two things at once, no matter how smart I think I am. Trying to operate a consulting firm that generates margin that then funds a product development effort, that was one of the biggest mistakes in my life. Now, we learned a ton, but I think what we should have done is we should have focused on just the consulting work, given ourselves a timeline, built a bunch of stuff, and did it in a way that we expected to hand it off to another firm to maintain or whatever it is. Chose a cutoff date and then pivoted to completed a product. But that also wouldn't have been possible, right? The structures you set up, the people that you have to go sell, to go invoice, to manage projects, those are not the same types of people that you need to build a product company. And so it was just a pipe dream. It was me fitting in what I wanted to happen into what was going to happen, and I shouldn't have done that. But pivoting over was the realization that if we wanted this to ever be a product, we needed to make a definitive choice. And so we burned through the capital of the profit that we made. This was right during COVID, and we got a PPP loan, and that actually extended our runway for another 6 months. And that allowed us to to raise a seed round with a product already built. Basically, it was really, really, really shallow compared to what we have now. We probably have 50 times more product than we did then. But it was enough to show that people wanted to buy it, that they were engaging from our marketing, that they were signing contracts, that they were implementing, that they were working with us. And I think that without that focus for the 7 months that we did, I don't know that we would have been nearly as far as we are now. So I don't want you to think that I regret doing it that way, but that transition was not smooth, and I would not recommend it to anyone.
So if you can go in a time machine and like if you did it all over again, what would be your path?
Um, I would have just I moved into my parents' basement when I started the company, but we were doing consulting work, so I was able to pay myself a small salary almost at first. I think because I already moved into my parents' basement because I was already freezing my ass off during the winter time with no heat down there. Like I should have just bit off the entire amount and said no consulting firm. Let me just fly around the country using frequent flyer points and do this research and really just commit to building the product. I think in retrospect it's a lot easier to see, but in the moment I didn't realize just how possible it was to build something. It wasn't going to be good, but in the moment I didn't even realize that it was possible that you could work and build something that somebody wants. Like that's actually not very difficult at all. It's building something that's really good that's difficult. And I actually think we could have gotten really early traction pretty quickly. I think we would have diluted a ton more and raised a lot more capital to get to where we are now. So there's a huge amount of monetary value of the bootstrapping that we did. But I think that the focus would have taught me more lessons sooner. And as a person, as like a human that has a limited lifespan, I would be further ahead in my journey than I am now. And I think that would have been worth the additional dilution. So I know it's a really weird and convoluted way to answer your question, but I think back then when I was 30, I wasn't thinking about the totality of my life and how I could be useful to society. I was just trying not to fail. So
Dude, no, I think it was totally deep, man. I think that was awesome, and the way you kind of looked at it versus value versus time value versus money value, right? And how you kind of wrapped it together. So don't you think though, like that you learned a lot from the consulting to make the product really good?
and I actually think yes, but I also learned I think far more on how to make the company good. They're just mistakes about having tough confrontations with friends that you work with, right? When you start a company, you're going to hire friends. And I was just really awkward about having normal business confrontations with people that were friends, about letting people go soon and paying them a severance instead of trying to force someone who's never going to try to work out. Like these are painful lessons that, I was avoiding being a tyrant or being some evil person, but it's actually far more, humane and ethical to just be blunt with someone and say, look, this is stressing you out. You're not being productive here. This is not a good fit. Let me scrape together whatever cash I can to just help you have a soft landing to get the next role. And I just, at a point in time, I just could not have that conversation. I don't know why. It's painfully cringy thinking about it right now, looking back on my life. But I think those types of lessons, understanding what culture actually means, why it's important, how to protect it, that the creation of culture has more to do with removing things than adding things, that keeping that culture alive means being really specific and having an extremely high bar on who you hire. I learned all of those lessons when the stakes weren't as high as in the product company. So I think those are the lessons that I would not have learned, that losing would be really painful.
Yeah. No, I think that once again, love the insight that you had there. So, a lot of lessons, because it is tough. Because I've had to do it multiple times, is firing people. You could take it personal. You could lie to yourself and tell them that, oh, I just need to give them more time, when like in your heart, that it's just like, it's not a good fit. But what I've kind of found is too, especially in performance-based jobs, a lot of times people fire themselves, right? And what I mean by that is just like, if they really wanted to be there, they really wanted to be successful, their actions would be different and their choices would be different than what they're doing. So it's hard, but sometimes it's the way you got to look at it. So shifting gears a little bit, like, we kind of got into your journey a little bit and some of the things that you were doing. You said there was a lot of lumps and things that you went through that were challenging. I guess, like, what would you say, like, was the biggest mistake that you made as you were going through that journey, to get to where you're at today?
Oh man, there's so many. I think probably the departure of my two co-founders is the worst thing. the most painful, and also the most like damning, if you want to put it that way. There were different incentives. When I started the company, it was me and my friend that I'd played video games with in college. He had worked at Google as an engineer, is a really talented engineer, and just was extremely well plugged into the startup community. His roommate, one of his friends in college, was the CEO of Mixpanel. There was like a ton of connections that he had in Silicon Valley, and he lived out there for a while. He and I had always talked, online, like about starting a company, about building a product that would make a meaningful impact on the world and have some commercial viability. And so the two of us started off, and one of the pacts that we made was that we're not going to have a consulting firm. We're going to build a product. And I think there was agreement between the two of us that the bigger the product we built, the bigger the opportunity, the harder it is, right? Because if it's easy and there's a big market, that means everybody else would have done something in that market already. And I think we hunted around. To be honest, we didn't really have an exact idea of what we wanted to build. And I found out in talking to founders, that's more common than I thought. I was embarrassed about that for a long time, but the vast majority of founders that I think do a really good job, that I respect, have some similar story where it was like, I just wanted to do something that was cool and meaningful. I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, and I found that out by trying. But we had a few consulting customers that paid us a lot of money that we built custom software for. And it was just an incredible experience of learning how to work with these people and how to extract the truth out of them and build the thing that should be built instead of what they wanted to be built. And for my whole career, I'd basically been just doing whatever clients asked for. Whatever they asked for and they're willing to pay for, I thought about it, I was clever, and I processed it. And it was a way to like kind of flex the muscle of billing somebody money and getting paid for it, but testing where the boundaries were of how I could be like, no, I think that's a bad idea. Let's do this instead. And that was an incredible learning. We brought another one of our friends along, one of the most talented engineers that we both knew. And the three of us kind of built this thing. We somewhat accidentally built a very functional, very large, dozens of people large consulting firm that was pulling in millions of dollars a year and making hundreds of thousands, over $1 million in profit in some years. And over time, that decision to not commit to product or to consulting, that ate away at the profits and caused a huge amount of stress. Put us in a position where sometimes we couldn't make payroll and I didn't pay myself. And the three of us didn't have the same opinions about not paying ourselves. And I didn't make sure that we did. I just assumed that we all did. There was just a lot of that going on that I realized that one of the things that I do that is really valuable but also horrible is I try really hard and I hold other people to the same, not the same standard, but the same expression of that standard. And that's what I used to do. And I think that was the core of what caused the tension. So at a certain point in time, my first friend quit and said, I can't advise you to give up on the consulting stuff, but I don't think that you're going to start committing to building a product. And then a year after that, my other friend left as well, saying that it doesn't seem like your heart is in this consulting gig, and I'm not convinced this product is going to work. So in trying to save both and trying to balance both out, I ended up losing both of them. And I've recovered some of that friendship, and they're both on the cap table in a very small way. But yeah, that was clearly a mistake that I made. And had I chosen one or the other, it's not clear that we would have been successful. It's not clear that either of them would have stayed in anyway, but it would have been the better thing to have done. So.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for checking this out. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss it. Also hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode at all. And if you want to find out more about how I could help you or your organization, check out my website, www.ryanstaley.io. Now we're back to the video. So, Sonny, I think that was really telling what you just walked us through in terms of the biggest mistake with your co-founders and how it was hard because you were committed and you were trying to focus on multiple different things. And, like what you're talking about with your high standard of yourself, it does make it difficult on others sometimes when they don't have the same level. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, I don't know, did you watch basketball at all? Are you a basketball fan or no?
A lot more when I was a kid than recently. So I haven't really kept up since COVID. I kind of just stopped watching all sports when I wasn't sure if seasons were going to stop or not. So if it's something recent, I probably haven't followed it.
No, well, Michael Jordan talked about it in The Last Dance. Like, I think that's why he had such a hard time with teammates had such a hard time with him because he had like a really, really high standard in himself. And so he tried to translate that to everybody else, and the level of intensity wasn't there. Um, so, anyways, that's just kind of what that reminds me of potentially, because I've ran into that personally myself as well. So, what would you say then, like, is your single biggest challenge that you're running into now growing the company?
Well, every single time that we grow and we scale the team up a bit, it's always jarring, right? Like in the beginning, it was just me visiting shops, talking to people, talking to other folks, deciding what to build in product. Had just lost one of my co-founders, right? It was really just me, and then I very quickly I involved a couple other folks on a team. One person who's leading product right now, another person who's leading design. The two of them really came in and helped me quite a bit. But in those moments, those discussions about what to build and how to build it, they were extremely crisp and fluid. And we'd all go to bed and wake up and talk in the morning again, and the conversation would just continue. And you had this feeling of like knowing everything, if you will. And if there were mistakes, they were fine, but you could just kind of pick it up and click on. Well, when we raised a seed round, we went from 10 people to 30 people. And those 10 people, most of them had been together for 4 years doing consulting work, right? So there was a bond that we had formed. And I was able to zoom out pretty quickly, like, and have them take over and manage some things and talk to each other. And so now I'm kind of managing a team. I'm not part of every conversation. I'm letting things happen. I'm directing things. I'm still being very, very specific about a lot of stuff. When you go from 30 to 60, 70 people, you're zooming out again. And now you're having to create a leadership team. And I think I underappreciated just how much of a cheat code it was to have this group of 10 people that had been together for so long before we hired 20 more people. The depth of knowledge that they had, the experience that they had, them knowing me and what I like, them knowing each other, how to handle conflict with each other, they had years to hash that out. This new group of folks, they're all smarter than us. They're all better than us. They're all better engineers and better salespeople and better everything. And they've now had a year and a half of experience with the product and with the customers, but they haven't had that many 4 years of experience with each other. And I think I massively underestimated that when we added those 35 people on board recently. That was way bumpier than I expected, and we're just getting to the end of smoothing that out. And the thing that I'm learning that seems obvious again is no matter what, all the good things you did last time to make it happen smoothly, you can't assume they're just going to happen again. You have to put the same level of intensity and focus on all those things and then add on more after that. So that's something that we're just getting over. Another thing that's a big challenge right now is just when we were small, it was possible to focus on one thing, move and focus on another thing, move and focus on another thing in sequence. And things happened so quickly that you knew where the constraints were and you were just like fixing stuff left and right. We're now having to work on multiple parallel things at the same time and have it grouped together. And you know, whether it's an OKR method or something, there's tools out there to help organize these thoughts. But even with the tools, you got to bake it into the organizational structure of how you communicate and how you talk to each other. So we haven't done that, and that's not going super well. It's not affecting the current operations of the team per se, but it's affecting our ability to then keep scaling up, right? If we can't figure out how to organize and talk to each other and decide things and do things now without a lot of effort, well, it's not going to help to add another 60 people into the team, right? So that's really what I'm working on is trying to create more conflict. One of our board members, Ishan, he was the CEO of Reddit for a long time. He's the CEO of Terraformation, a company that's working on terraforming the world right now. Way bigger problems than we're trying to solve. But one of the things he warned me about is that if you want to hire a bunch of really smart, conscientious people that aren't assholes, there's no asshole policy, what you're going to struggle with is you're going to struggle with the white space between them. the super conscientious, highly motivated people, they're going to avoid conflict where possible. And the danger is things are going to get dropped. They're going to get dropped because you're missing conflict. Conflict actually helps improve the coverage of all the tasks that need to be done. And that framework has been super helpful. And it feels really counterintuitive that I'm trying to encourage more conflict within the team, but really that is the missing piece, and we're getting a lot better at it. And the good thing is that when you encourage conflict amongst a bunch of nice, kind, good-natured, hardworking people, it's goofy, but it's not painful, right? It's not harsh. So it's been a good thing to see, and I think we're growing a lot in that way.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And so any departments that are really challenging in terms of integrating like that DNA into the company or that management cadence?
There's a few things for a lot of different reasons. And I'm sure you know this, like companies always have different constraints and grow and shrink at different paces. But there's some things that we've done, like recruiting or customer success, that were just embedded in other roles. It was in the implementation role. You just maintain those relationships. We've never had a customer success role until just a few months ago, like 6 months, 9 months ago, a year ago maybe. Recruiting was really decentralized across the teams. The salespeople would recruit, the engineers would recruit. Now that things are starting to get centralized, right? As you grow, you need these centralization pieces to offer efficiencies. We're realizing that there's actually a lack of real knowledge as to how we do things. So those are the things that were initially hard, but have basically smoothed themselves out. I think really it's just coming up with ever increasingly strong cultural values and direction so that people don't have to coordinate as much to arrive at an aligned answer. And I think I didn't realize just how powerful it was to have a small team that by proxy all talk to each other just because they had to. And I don't think I increased the alignment through some sort of unifying direction enough. I thought I did, but I think it needs an entire scale up there to be able to get it so that different groups can 95% of the time not step on each other's toes. So that I think is really, it's not any one group, it's cross-functionally, and because we're starting to silo things out, you just have to specialize a bit. Those seams between the departments aren't established enough in a way that works really well yet.
Okay. Excellent, man. Well, unfortunately, we are, and it was really well thought out answer. Unfortunately, we're up on time right now. So where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Fulcrum? And then we'll wrap it up, man.
For every podcast I'm on, I always offer my email. It's sunny like the weather, SUNNY at fulcrumpro.com. And you can learn more about us at fulcrumpro.com. You can book a demo, look at our product. If you want to reach out on LinkedIn or send me an email, I'm always happy to respond and connect with anybody.
Excellent, man. Well, it was a pleasure having you on. If you are not connected to Sunny on LinkedIn, definitely connect to him. He has a very funny profile, just the way he words things and some of the things that he put about his exits before. So check it out. It'll give you a chuckle. It made me laugh. So Sunny, it was awesome having you on the show, and I really appreciate you being on, man.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for good questions.
All right. Thank you, sir. We'll see you all on the next episode.